So last week, I was lucky enough to hang with two interesting African-American entrepreneurs who are in South Africa on business. Talib Graves-Manns is the entrepreneur in residence with Google for Entrepreneurs and Code2040 at the American Underground in Durham, North Carolina. Now, Talib is also the co-founder of three startups, RainbowMe Kids, Point AB, and Life on Autopilot.
My name is Talib Graves-Manns. I came here from Durham, North Carolina to learn about business opportunities in South Africa, the culture, and the people. And I've been here for 6 or 7 days, maybe 8. I don't remember anymore. Been having such a good time. And we dig into more of what I do as we move forward.
Now, Brien Jordan-Jack is the other African-American entrepreneur I chatted with. He's an aerospace engineer and a celebrated commercial airline pilot for a leading global carrier. He's also had a long stint working in investment banking, and currently he's leveraging all his technical training, professional experience, and impressive network into launching various ventures in new media and international property investments.
My name is Brien Jordan-Jack, and when I'm in South Africa, I'm known as Batandwa. I come to South Africa frequently for business, and I am basically wanting to replicate what I've been able to do throughout my history as a professional pilot, as a deal maker and connector of like-minded people. I want to basically bring that energy to South Africa, to Johannesburg, and the African continent altogether.
Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur, right? Entrepreneur on both sides of my family for 3 generations, my maternal side and my paternal side. As a result, I have a high tolerance for what goes along with building a startup, which is risk. Right now, I am serving as a role as an entrepreneur in residence with Google for Entrepreneurs, and that's powered by Code2040, which is an organization based in Silicon Valley, right, that is focused on getting more blacks and Latinos into technology, tech education, entrepreneurship, and ultimately access to the venture capital they need to be able to grow their funds. And this organization was created by Laura Weidman Powers and Tristan Walker, who met while in graduate school in California. But it was built out of the need to increase the numbers of representation at Silicon Valley companies because the numbers are dismally low, right? Less than 2%, as I'm sure many of the listeners know. And you know about what's happening in Silicon Valley across these major companies. So the flagship of the organization of Code2040 is called the Fellows Program, where they find your top tier computer science talent, college talent throughout the nation. They apply for the Fellows Program. They come to Silicon Valley for the summer. They get an internship at a tech company. And ultimately, they build a pipeline to get those people into the jobs, right, to fill the needs. The reaction has been really picking up steam over the past 6 months. I think with Intel just jumping on with $1.4 million contribution to Code2040. Very strong relationships with the VCs, the companies in the Valley, and it's been trending and doing very well. That has happened for the first couple of years of the organization. And over the past year, we've been focusing on entrepreneurship. That's where I come in. So I was a part of the first class of entrepreneur in residence. It was 3 of us, myself, somebody in Austin, Texas, and somebody in Chicago. And the whole concept here is we have Silicon Valley, which has its big gaps, right, on the tech education side and career side and also on the entrepreneurship side. So they ask the question, well, how do we impact communities outside of Silicon Valley with more resources so that people can grow their ventures, primarily, yes, blacks and Latinos? And that's where I came in as part of this first cohort to grow my businesses. I have 3 businesses that I'm currently operating right now. So they give you money. They give you $40,000 in no strings attached seed money for you to be able to grow your venture, and a lot of networking to be able to help raise money, find co-founders, develop your product, etc. And I've been in that role for 10 months. I have an additional 8 months left with it. Going into March at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas at the Interactive Festival, we're going to release 5 more entrepreneurs in residence. And all of these entrepreneurs in residence in total will be 8, and they will have office space, and they get their stipend, and they get to come to the Valley quarterly for meetings to help you grow your business and to network. And those new entrepreneur residents will be announced in Austin, Texas in March, which is going to be great to have more people coming on board.
So I have a question for you, and it's a tough question because Often on our podcast, the African Tech Roundup, we point to the differences in the way ecosystems run in Silicon Valley versus various places on the continent: Cape Town, Joburg, Nairobi, Kigali, Lagos, Cairo, Tunis. And, you mentioned that people are essentially going to hopefully get a leg up, an opportunity to learn and find their feet. There's unencumbered cash they're given to make their dreams happen. On the continent, there are no such cushy starts. And from the get-go, the only metrics that matter often are revenue and profitability. Revenue being the most important because it's usually a survival metric. Do you not think that, throwing that sort of bone at somebody, essentially giving them the comfort of not having to deal with the reality of what a startup essentially is, which is just this risk, this scary place to be, this opportunity to fail and just crash and burn. If you take away all that and just offer them comfort, aren't you really setting them up to not thrive? Because, that's not essentially the environment some of the biggest startups and the most successful startups of the world seem to come out of. They seem to come out of a very hard place, a very difficult, striving environment.
So that's relative, right? So what the $40,000, right, in macro terms is not a lot of money, right? The whole idea of giving you $40,000 is to kind of level the playing field, right? So for your African American and your Latino entrepreneurs in the United States, compared to their Caucasian counterparts, right, who based on the data have more resources to be able to grow their business and have the legs to be able to do that. So my answer is no, right? It's $40,000. That allows you to pay your rent, invest some more money in your venture to get you to the point where you can raise serious seed money. It gives you peace of mind, right? That's basically what it's prepared to do. I can't speak to what's happening on the continent because I've only been here for 7 to 8 days. When I come back next time, I'll be better prepared to be able to speak to that. But that's kind of the way we look at the $40,000 associated with this type of seed money, is to give you the peace of mind and some cash to be able to grow your venture. So Google underwrites the program. So they cut a check to Code2040, which then disseminates that into the various communities.
In terms of the continent, I live now in the Middle East, and I make regular visits to the continent: Sub-Saharan Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, Algeria. So what I'm getting at is that in the same sense that there's a different ecosystem and microcosm for each of those places that you may want to operate as a startup, as a business, as an investor, the same nuance you have to take into these instances in the United States. The startup ecosystem in Silicon Valley, very much different than the startup ecosystem that might exist in Nashville, in the southeastern United States, in Raleigh, Durham, where Talib is based, in Detroit. You get my point. So what I'm saying is that this. You may have a situation where the Google Code2040 system begins to become so successful because you begin to tap into talent that you otherwise may not have encountered. And so I think what we could do is take that strategy and then bring it to the continent. Let's see if that hasn't, let's say, been the order of business, so to speak, then let's try, because like I said, you may encounter those that you've been missing out on so far, and that just start to develop in itself a newer school of talent, of genius talent, in fact. So I'd like to, Talib, if you want to speak any more on that.
Let me give you a sense of where I was coming from the question. What's happening on the African continent? Within a stone's throw of us in any direction, there is a co-working space, an incubator, an accelerator, and these are words that are bandied about. It's very popular PR at the moment to be a bank with like a little accelerator program on the side, to be
Is there money attached to them?
Well, often money is attached to them, but again, the question for people who truly understand what makes a Google, is it real money? Is it real intent? Or is it tokenism? Given what the real needs are. And in Africa, again, it usually comes down to either you mean it or you don't. And in covering tech on the continent, we find very few people do mean it. And unfortunately, this cuts across the grain, whether it's VC interests, large corporates that, you get what I'm saying. So I'm trying to get a sense of, is this really working? Is this really...
I'll give you an example of how it works. I'll break it down. So the way Code2040 built a network, right? We call it a family of people. So right now you have two groups of people. You have the student talent, the computer science student talent, right? That goes through the program and they go into the Valley and they develop networks there, right? And then you have the entrepreneurs, right? So just 4 months ago, I was doing a crowdfunding campaign for one of the startups I was working on called RainbowMe, which is about increasing diversity in kids' entertainment, right? We were going to do a crowdfunding campaign. I'm in the Valley for a meeting, right? And because of the network of Code2040 through the Fellows Program, I meet a young man who just got finished doing an internship at Indiegogo, right? A Latino young man who's part of our network, of our family. And when I told him I'm working on doing a crowdfunding campaign and I want to raise $35,000, he says, all right, I want to plug you into the network of the people at the organization that'll help me get it done. Right? That network effect is very valuable, even more valuable than the $40,000, because what we have is limited access to the resources of people, and the network effect, which I think is pivotal in being able to grow any venture, whether that's technology or not. We have over approximately 100 fellows who have graduated the program that are currently working in roles, and I can pick up the phone or send a WhatsApp or a text message to those people, and they're going to open up their Rolodex to me, and I'm going to do the same for them. So I'm not too sure about what's happening on the continent, but I think it's very important to open up the Rolodex to relationships. Right now, we're sitting at a table with 4 people, and everybody has their device out, and contacts are accessible. We're willing to exchange.
I get you. You hit the nail on the head. So I'm trying to get to the value, to the value of what, these programs can possibly deliver. It seems from the outside looking in, okay, from Africa looking into Silicon Valley, there's a culture of really long runways. So you see huge companies, your Ubers, the WhatsApps of this world, who are the toasts of Silicon Valley, except we're not so sure why in Africa, because as far as we're concerned, we don't see any money.
So I just want to clarify that what you mean is that you're talking about a disconnection between the startups themselves, the materially popular startup, the new kids on the block and cool kids on the block, startups who might not be, let's say, showing revenue at this moment.
So here's the thing: there seems to be a culture of encouraging startups to come up that don't seem rooted in the reality of what businesses should be, which is based in sound fundamentals and solid models. So it's all good to have all these users and to have all.
I want to respond real quick. We had this exact conversation yesterday because it is a valid question, valid point. What it is, you do have some companies that are receiving a pass, let's say, early on in their development, being valued in the Uber example at higher levels than, let's say, a company like FedEx, who's a large shipping company and airline that has been around since 1978. Whereas Uber, only 5 years old, has a higher valuation, and we don't understand the model yet and can't see, let's say, the viability and the revenue. What I'll say about that is this. These models that we're seeing, like in Amazon, for example, are strikingly different than traditional companies and models. So the revenue models that you're going to see are also going to be different. So you may see a lag in revenue, but I guarantee you that the innovation that surrounds the product is the innate value in those companies, and that is actually where the investors, where the shareholders are basically banking. They're banking on the innovation itself, because it could be, for example, in the Uber example, in the WhatsApp example, that eventually you have those traditional companies that will want to, and that already have started to integrate these models into their own ecosystems. For example, businesses now directly having accounts with an Uber, as an example. Now, if you were early on as an investor, and that wasn't even a possibility at the time, but let's say the founders were able to basically sell you on the fact that where we are now is very much different than where we'll be in 10 years. And this technology that we own, okay, is basically the only technology like it that exists on the planet. And we're already in markets that are multinational. So in the same instance, like my company, my group Axiom, like Talib's company, Life on Autopilot, what we're doing is essentially kind of breaking down borders in terms of being multinational startups. And the ones that you're mentioning are multinational startups. So they're encountering different challenges than a traditional company would, because traditional companies don't start out as a multinational. So revenue models will be different than what we've been used to. In summary, I'll say that what we're seeing is a kind of an evolution in terms of the startup culture. What we're witnessing really is a pivot. And I think it's a great time for us, for our society and our generation, because it means that young people who have ideas don't have to be disheartened or distracted or dissuaded from actually carrying out that idea, because they see revenue is not the only benchmark that we're looking at anymore. We're looking at innovation. We're looking at, can your product, change someone's lives? Can everyone be a part of it? Everyone top to bottom are using Uber and WhatsApp and other connecting technologies. So that's the kind of the future. We're looking at another 10 to 20 to 30 years from now, and it's going to be a very much more connected society. Your home's connected, our Internet of Things, and that's a new space. It's extremely new. So I guess attaching it to the traditional models, like we're away from the traditional models now, which is a good thing, I think, because that means that we're actually now writing a new chapter about what it means to be successful in business. We know the revenue is going to come. So I think you have to be patient, and I think you have to be kind of ahead in terms of innovation.
So are you with him on that, Talib?
Sort of. I mean, I'm all about revenue, right? What I kind of see, and I'm not an expert, right? I'm not a venture capitalist, right? Not yet. I will be in shortly, but for some reason, I get a feeling from a significant number of founders that the success is raising VC. Right, the success is raising $20 million, $50 million in VC, $10 million in VC. Like, that is the benchmark of success, right? It's not. Benchmark of success is building a profitable business with revenue so you can pay back your investors if you even need to raise any, right? And that's my stance on the way I approach all my interactions in business. It's a popular mindset from the VCs, right? They want to be able to get their return, but they also know that, only 1 in 9 startups make it. Yeah, so the risk is high. So they need to have that 30x return out of their portfolio that happens, on an annual or biannual basis to balance out the books, right? And I get that. So they're throwing money at things that might not be successful. That's part of the risk factor, which I totally agree with. We would not have an Uber. We would not have a Facebook. We would not have a Twitter. We would not have all Elon Musk products. We would not have anything. So you have to have that risk in there. Going back to where I stand, because I represent African American and Latino entrepreneurs, is that the statistic is something like 1 out of every 7 entrepreneurs compared to whites that are African American or Latino get a chance to talk to a VC. And then when we do get a deal, it's something like only 60 cents on the dollar, right? My charge is to help level out the playing field so we have access to, so we can afford to fail. Because right now, we're not getting enough access so we can afford to fail and have the same risk factor associated with our businesses, and that's a problem, right? And I'm sure that's probably a big problem on the continent as well.
So you guys are straddling two worlds, really. One, where there's structural issues that won't be solved, however successful Silicon Valley might be corporately. There's structural issues that you have to fight for and represent individually and as part of a greater community, in this case, the African American community. And the same is true here. I mean, yeah, without getting all nationalist, not a lot's changed in many respects as far as who controls capital and how deals are done and who gets to participate. With that said, I want you to speak specifically to the businesses you guys run, the enterprises you've started, even the ones you started and failed at. Talk me through your approach to making it work. Factor your background, what you've learned professionally as a pilot, an engineer, as an entrepreneur who's grown up in an entrepreneurial family. Because even that's not something I can even relate to, because I'm a second generation professional, first generation entrepreneur. So talk us through some of those things.
We'll talk about failure first, right? I believe that is instrumental, right, in developing as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and working with other entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you about my biggest failure, right? My biggest failure was in real estate, coming out of 2008, 2009 financial crisis in the United States. So my story is I worked my ass off making, $23,000 a year U.S., right, when I graduated from college, doing retail work in the Washington, D.C. area, hustling, building up my credit so I could buy properties, right? My objective was to buy, have 4, 5, 6 properties by the time I was 28 years old, which was the same year as the financial crisis, right? So I acquired 4 properties, and they all were deeply affected, with 40% loss in market value in 2008. But my objective was to build equity in these properties and have $100,000 cash by the time I was 28 to reinvest in other ventures, and that did not happen. And I had to reevaluate my entire business model. I'm still exiting one of those properties, right? Because it tanked and I bought my property in primarily in Hampton, Virginia, which is a predominantly black neighborhood. So when America sneezed, the black community caught a cold, and we're still coming out from the bottom of that. So when it comes down to failure, I think that it's very important to talk about the lessons that we learn from it. In reference to real estate now, I do a lot more due diligence on a micro and a macro level when I'm looking at deals that I want to get involved with or offer any counsel on. In reference to some of the ventures that I'm working on now, I have a life on autopilot and a product called SkyCap that I'm one of the co-founders on. We have a really great team of 2 other individuals. And our first product is a cap carrier that holds baseball caps during transit so they won't get crushed. And we own the patent for the product. We're currently looking for investors to grow that venture. It's a lifestyle brand, luggage brand. I would encourage the listeners to go check it out at www.lifeonautopilot.com and check it out. So that venture is really close to my heart. We worked on that for years in R&D to get it to the point where it's at now. Another venture that we created is called Black Wall Street Homecoming, which celebrates the rich history of black commerce communities throughout the United States. There was a very prominent one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and another one in Durham, North Carolina, where I live. So we created an event called Black Wall Street Homecoming this past October to celebrate the history of Durham's Black Wall Street. 2 very large businesses still exist, Mechanics and Farmers Bank, which is one of, I believe, of 20 African-American-owned banks in the nation that still exist, as well as North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance, an insurance company that is African-American-owned in North Carolina. So we created this event to celebrate the past, but usher in the future of innovation. So we invited out venture capital guests from Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. to an event. We had 400 guests, and we discussed deal flow. In specifics, we talked about one deal, which is a very interesting one on the continent because I'm walking around, I see all of the hair extensions, is the $9 billion hair weave, hair extension market. So there's a deal called Maven Hair that a guy who we went to Hampton University with built, which creates a marketplace for the selling of hair extensions where beauticians can sell it and in turn get back a percentage of the sale. It's an awesome deal. So we invited the venture capitalists out that invested in that deal, which ended up actually being 2 African-American firms that came out. They were part of the investment syndicate, Cross Culture Venture Capital, and also Impact America Fund, right? And through the VCs that were in the room for 2 days, we had over $100 million in venture capital funds that could be dispersed into various businesses. And we had 400 guests. We had 7 pitches, Shark Tank style, inside of a black-owned restaurant on the same street, right, in Durham. And it went really well. And we're going to do more of that. We're going to have a presence at South by Southwest in Austin. We're going to do something in Washington, D.C., which has a very rich black commerce community there. And continue to grow these, right? We'd love to be able to make it an international thing where we come to South Africa and bring the same concept here with celebrating deal flow and bringing out venture capitalists and entrepreneurs and allowing people to open up their Rolodex, right, and help each other out. Another venture that I work on is called Words Live, which is about increasing literacy through lyrics, which is based in Washington, D.C. And the founder just finished up an accelerator at Halcyon in Georgetown, which is a social entrepreneurship accelerator. I'm really proud of the work that he's doing. You can check that out at Words Live. It's WordsLive.com. And I also have my consulting company where I do marketing and finance consulting for startups, small and medium-sized businesses, primarily in the United States. But as long as the more I come back here, I like to get some deals happening in South Africa.
The one thing we have in common, when I say we, I mean being based in South Africa, and African Americans seem to have in common is living in a highly racialized society. Tell me if ever, the very strong emphasis on Black pride and growing the African American tech community, entrepreneurship community, being specific to that constituent. Tell me if there's ever any negative spin on being committed to that specific aim in the context of a very globalized environment in the world that we live in.
Yes. So we have people, not many, right, who say, well, why are you guys segmenting yourselves? Why are you solely focused on this? But everything we build goes back to the data. The organization Code2040 is built off of the data point that the year in 2040 is a tipping point where the minority populations become the majority populations, right? If we're building a better America, right, and our demographics are changing, we got to make sure that the people that it's changing into have the tools and the resources they need in order to make America great and to continue to build and to iterate. So that's my answer to anybody who brings up that question. Just like, do you want America to be great? If so, we have to provide resources to these people who are going to grow, who are growing the economy. Then I drop the mic. That's it. You know, if anybody disagrees with that, then that's a much different issue that will require sitting down and with a moderator.
So this is a data-driven decision you've made as a businessman. There are no ideological worldviews leaking into the things you do. This is now a personal question. I mean, is it purely a data situation for you?
I mean, it's also personal for me. It's no misconception that people do business with people they're comfortable doing business with. Third generation entrepreneur. Great grandmother was a seamstress. Grandfather's a mechanic. Other grandfather's a taxi driver. My father sold apparel. My mother works in real estate. And I can honestly say at this point, about 95% of the money that's coming to my household has been exchanged to African American dollars. I'm the anomaly. This is not normal, but I recognize that it is possible to circulate dollars more within some communities, right? I am not a proponent of having total insular communities, though. I think that in order to grow in the form of capitalism and helping out, you have to include other people, especially if you're building tech companies. You want as many users as possible, right? So that, I mean, it has to go into your design.
So you talk me through some of your businesses, and I want you to factor your background, learnings, what you studied professionally, your jumps from industry to industry, the failings, what comes out on the other side.
I'll give you some highlights. I would say it's a unique path that I've taken, and I've always recognized that. For one, I'm the only professionally trained pilot in my family. The other parts of my family are in medicine as professional medical doctors, a family of educators. So when I took the initiative to go into engineering as a background to prepare me for flying as a profession, I knew that I had a passion for flying itself. It's a very romantic kind of undertaking, flying an airplane, like having the opportunity to handle the controls. If you haven't done it, all the listeners, go to the airport, find someone who's a flight instructor, get in the airplane, and take a lap around the pattern. It's very much a direct connection to nature in that standpoint. So I wanted to go from what I could do professionally as a pilot into what I could do individually as an entrepreneur and as a business person. In my upbringing, there were always entrepreneurs around, but it was never really anyone to go to directly to say, how do you make that happen? So I took initiative from, let's say, going from a professional pilot instructor to going into the business community and using that as a tool to barter for skill. Particularly when you're flying privately, you encounter a lot of business people. So that's one. Secondly, it was like an MBA program, because on the flight, each flight time on average for us is an hour and a half, 2 hours. If it's West Coast, it's longer. And during that time, you do have the opportunity to discuss lots of items, let's say, going on with that particular deal. If you're dealing with a real estate investment professional, someone who's an owner, who's doing deals for their own companies, you encounter attorneys, you encounter medical doctors who have their own businesses, who own the real estate that their practices are in. So what I did was kept my eyes and ears open throughout that whole process. I was able to parlay that into an account executive position at a national bank in the U.S. And I did that and learned the finance business, really, I mean, in detail from top to bottom, which is not something that all of us get to do unless we're a finance major, normally going into working at a Wall Street bank, if you're in the U.S. or if you're in any other place in the world where you have, finance institutions where you can go and start there and kind of understand the levels as you matriculate naturally up the ranks to executive. So going directly from a private pilot, or I should say pilot who was flying commercially for an executive group of people, because it's a misconception. I want to clear up all the proper terms, right? So a private pilot means that you can just fly people. I could train you to be a private pilot in a month, right? So a pilot who flies professionally for anyone is a commercial pilot. That means that you're paid to do that specifically for anyone who kind of charters you or pays you, or you do that on demand, right? So now I've elevated to the point of international wide-body pilot, which is a whole nother animal, right? But in that, it allows me to travel to different jurisdictions. I get to do a lot of market research on all of my travels. And that kind of separates out where I think my business is able to do things in a way that is a lot more, let's say, dynamic than other like older juggernaut companies, right? So I'm a lot more dynamic in that, I can do research in 4 or 5 different cities in 4 or 5 different countries in 30 days. So my company, Axiom, which basically specializes in real estate transactions, real estate investments, consulting, and media and film, through partnerships, through financial partnerships, and through other business-to-business partnerships within the United States, on the continent, in South Africa, in Kenya, and Rwanda. We want to basically give, continent-wide, actually, because there's no limit in terms of who we're willing to partner with. So if the listeners out there, if they have these ideas, they've already been drumming up, by all means, they can get in contact with your show or with me directly, and we can kind of start that conversation. Because my standpoint is that it's all about relationships. All the successful businesses that I've had were done through relationships that were kind of massaged and built over time, not something that happened one-off. So when we talk about failures, those were my failures when I was putting a lot of energy into a one-off investment, into a situation where, I would partner with people and they say, okay, this is the event, or this is the one-off project that everyone is just going to make a windfall from. And then it falls through because there's no relationship building. There's just an idea that, okay, we think this is what's going to happen. But over time, when you build relationships, you get to exchange ideas. You get to witness the kind of ebb and flow of what's happening market-wise. I get to exchange my ideas from experts I've been working with who are both business partners and financial partners. So if it's more of a relationship over time, it's, to me, a lot more successful. And that's actually what I've been able to experience through my business dealings. So that is kind of like what I'm doing in terms of combining my skills. As a pilot, obviously there's a lot of attention to detail. There's a lot of attention to regulations, and all those things keep us safe, right? So in the business standpoint, you also have legalities, regulations to keep you safe, to keep your business safe, to keep you protected from any, eventual collapse or downfall. And it's the same for us. So, I try to transfer the skills quite frequently, and that's been successful for me so far.
I'd like to know what some of the greatest misconceptions we might have about your scene across the water, and some of the misconceptions the communities you come from have about investing in Africa. There must be an information gap. Otherwise, we'd see tons of you guys out here.
There are obviously gross generalizations, stereotypes that exist in both directions. I'll speak to those that I'm familiar with in both instances. So for, what you, I guess, would glean from the U.S. media or from what your perspective is that is projected from the U.S. is that it's just opulent, and that all of the communities are doing excellently and great, including the African American community, and that there's really maybe not an interest for anyone from that hemisphere or from North America to come and do business on the continent, wherever we are on the continent, right? So there's kind of like this divide that is artificial. In fact, yeah, it's a digital divide, right? So the media that you receive here and that we receive is also very different. Now, why there aren't more, I would say, people who get the inkling to come to the continent to do business is because, for one, there's very few channels for smaller groups to do that. And we're talking about small to medium enterprises. Yeah, so the multinationals is their playground, and they've been doing it, and they have the expertise for a long time. But the SMEs are not, and they're dealing with different challenges, obviously. And so, for them to then take on a global or multinational undertaking as a SME might be too daunting to them, or might they feel that way. But what Talib and I want to stress is that it is available and possible through the correct channels and through the correct, let's say, information. Let's say you do have to do the research for your own self. Understand that the African continent is 54 countries. So, that's quite a few in terms of business. And each of those countries have a specialized history, have a specialized economy. They're from currencies to to politics, the pestle models and all these things. So do your due diligence, but understand that there are a few that could line up very well with the business that you already are running or already are involved with. So once you get to those levels, it also takes patience. So that could be also why some people are hesitant, because they're maybe are not looking at a longer enough horizon, I think, to go into, maybe developing something in a multinational capacity.
Something we spoke about off mic, this mentality that almost a hit and run mentality as opposed to, a farming mentality. That's the mentality that brings you here to be here a while and grow something, massage value out of it. Talib, be honest, you packed an elephant gun, right? Because you hadn't been here before. You thought you'd be off the plane, and you. What sort of expectations did you have? And I know your expectations would have been colored by friendships with people. And how different would your expectations have been had you not come or been exposed to the network you now have?
Yeah, Brien didn't give me a lot of heads up. I've had, one of my business mentors who lived in Cape Town and Johannesburg for years has told me about the country, but the media doesn't do a good job of explaining what it looks like aesthetically here. When we had lunch by the Woolworth around the corner, I forgot the name of that neighborhood. Morningside, I was shocked to see so many high-end vehicles, right? And the girls hopping out of the cars, these African girls, and red bottom shoes and Range Rovers, and we've gone out socially to hang out at the clubs, and they're popping bottles and, hanging out and, and enjoying that lifestyle, right? There's a lot of misconceptions on what the people look like here, what they eat, where they spend their money, where they work. There's so many misconceptions here that...
History, basically, that you're looking at an apartheid and decent township, but the problem is that you've seen only the top end of the market. You haven't been to a township. You're going to Soweto. You're going to go to Vilkazi Street, to the museum of Nelson Mandela. That's where is the touristic area. It's all nicely, and Mapunya Mall and this.
Go to the hood. We're going to go in the hood. Like, it's all good. It is all good. We're going to walk, and we're going to make a right, and we're going to go deep, and we're not going to go too deep, but yeah. I lived in East Baltimore. All right. If I see something worse than the areas that I lived in East Baltimore, I wouldn't be like, well, damn. But there's so many misconceptions out here, and I'm a proponent of people managing their own media though. So I can't accept all of the blame for my misconceptions, because we're now in a world where, we're reporting a podcast live sitting outside, and there's 5 tablets on the phone and there's GoPro cameras here. So I encourage more of my African brothers and sisters to control their own media and push it in our direction so that we can know more of the nuances of the culture.
Saying that when you see in Sandton, they get the perception that everything looks like America. Sandton can be a suburb of any city in Cleveland or whatever, but there is all other millions of people that still live in townships and stuff, and that's the thing that where people, you don't see it, because unless you go there specifically. But if you go to La Sun City and Lion Park and this, all you see is tourist area, which is very fixed and very, nicely up a first world thing. So that's really what probably when they go to the townships now, they will see the other side of.
So again, like, I want to talk about the parallels, So I don't speak disparagingly about any communities, because there's layers and layers and layers in history about each of those communities and why it could be, where it is in comparison to other parts of the community. So I want to talk about some communities in the U.S. That are juxtaposed against some high-end areas, like in Los Angeles and South Central Los Angeles or Compton. These are areas, and Detroit and Flint, Michigan, what's going on right there with the water crisis, right? In any number of areas in the United States, we could make some parallels to what we see materially here, what's going on in Johannesburg and surrounding areas. So there's layers to it. There's a political history that's there. There's a revolutionary kind of spirit in a lot of these communities, and an evolution, let's say, from what happened at very critical points in time. The LA riots in the United States, people aren't familiar. They should review it. The Detroit riots, the Tulsa, Oklahoma bombings, the Rosewood massacres, and all those things are what create the layers that exist that would explain or help to contextualize what you have going on with Alex, for example, just up against Santon, with, you know, any number of other areas in the U.S. that we could talk about in Baltimore, D.C. And again, not to disparage those areas. There's layers to those instances, and the people who are there don't choose those histories for those specific zones, let's call them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just another community. Everyone who are in those, there's many people in those communities are doing great work in terms of having those communities be viewed differently. For one, many of them, specifically in New Orleans, have community gardens where the citizens can come and go to public spaces, open spaces, to plant food for themselves and to also sell to farmers in the community. So there's a great amount of work that also goes on that we don't see when we just drive by and just pass, you know, like in passing, and say, oh wow, that's too bad, you know, like, and so in those terms, you know, let's try to contextualize it and maybe unpack the layers. Yeah.
Interesting, for context purposes, Alexandria is rumored to have created more black millionaires than any other township in South Africa. And of course, Soweto would be like, hey, that's us. But I tend to believe it as well. Incidentally, this podcast is syndicated to Alex FM, which is easily one of the country's largest community radio stations, at least second largest here in Gauteng. And so again, it's crazy that part of where they air is Santon right here. And the one thing I'm very humble to is the fact that there's a very big difference between access and and inclusiveness. While someone living in Alex has technically access to everything Santon has to offer, they're not truly included. And that leads me to my curiosity with the world you guys come from. Coming from an African American context, a minority context.
I just want to correct the origin. So I'm Caribbean born from Trinidad and Tobago, but it's very, important to note the African descendants are from all walks of life and all parts of the world. And there's 400 million of us in the Western Hemisphere, in North America, South America, Central America, adjoining islands. And now many of us have made, let's say, or our parents made the migration to the United States, to Europe, to UK, to gain that access that you just talked about that was, let's say, inaccessible even 30 or 40 or 50 years ago, in some sense, depending on where you might have come from in a diaspora. So we're a diaspora everywhere on the planet, really. But for my background and also one of my partner's background, we're both Caribbean from Trinidad and Tobago, and have also a lot of other friends who are, let's say, we don't have a nationalistic ideological issue in terms of, where those, so we don't separate ourselves by those national implications, right? So we're a big community of people. So that's what we're trying to do, is connect all those people in a way that allows us to, come here to sit with you. And the same, we'd invite you to New York, to Harlem, to Red Rooster, which is owned actually by Ethiopian by ancestry, born in Swedish, Matthew Samuelson. So we're connected in many ways, and we can, open up ourselves and our communities and just give, kind of a background for each of us. So that's why each of us should be very versed on the background that you're in, be an expert on your area. If you can't, for anyone else's, and then you can extend that information to anyone else in the community.
I believe strongly in that, coming to the table, as it were, at the world stage, and having something to offer, as opposed to, a bowl for everyone else's stuff, And so, bringing it back to tech, there's this, there's a snobbery around, what qualifies firstly as a startup. Again, scale, quick growth, traction, whatever. Then there's a snobbery around tech startups specifically. What have been your experiences around those definitions and your rights to claim them, or to fly under that flag? So what do you think, Talib?
So I am a proponent of business, whether that's a tech startup or whether that's a traditional business. I have companies that work in both. I prefer physical goods that have tech components to them. So, for example, our next iteration of luggage through life in Autopilot will be tech enabled. It allows you to dock into GPS and stuff like that. But I don't care as long as it makes money, right? There is a snobbery in the tech community about the way a company has to be built in order for it to be credible. There's some merit to some of those conversations, but for me, it's not a yes or no decision for me to get in that type of business. But to further, I think that what I'm most attracted to that are people that are building solutions that are viable within their communities. Just like the deal I explained earlier about Maven Hair, which solves for the $9 billion hair care industry. It's really a supply chain business because they have the relationship to be able to produce and procure the hair, and they use tech simply to enable the transaction. But the real bulk of the money is being made on the supply chain side of the deal. So when you extract these deals and really think about what's viable within your community, I'd say only look at tech as a way to enable the business to make more money versus just building the tech. I think it's very important for entrepreneurs to think about fundamentally, what are you solving for? And does tech help you and enable you to do that more efficiently? If you check box yes, then spend more money, more time on the tech side. If not, just focus on the core of the business. Don't get lost in the sauce of users and widgets and analytics and all that other stuff if your business is not solid yet, which I think in a significant time can be analyzed and done without tech. Tech is an enabler for you to make a more efficient business.
And so, Brien, given you self-confessed details-oriented person, is that not a danger sometimes in your approach to doing business, that you can get really bogged down? Do you not need more pragmatic entrepreneurial thinking like Talib seems to have in order to make it work?
There's 4 forces of flight, right? So there's lift, there's gravity, there's propulsion, and there's drag, right? So that means that we have to have balance in order to remain in flight. So no matter how powerful the vessel is, no matter let's say how, also there's some vessels you look at them and you don't think that they can fly, right? Because they look like, machines that just aren't equipped to take flight. So I would say with, referring to that analogy, that you do need balance. You need a pragmatic approach. You need someone that is within your organization. If you're an entrepreneur or a startup, whether you're individual or not, you need to definitely address the pragmatism and the traditional business items in order for you to be successful. But if you're one of those people who are very innovative and very creative, then don't abandon that because you feel pressure from the ecosystem or the society or the startup culture to be a certain way. There's room, I think, in that space for you to be yourself and also be successful. But I think there does require a balance between the two.
Okay, so we have to wrap this up because you have townships to go see. So where to await. Be kind to the people. A lot of good folk out there. Yeah. Do you want to plug someone?
Yeah. So really quickly, we spoke a lot about the business side, but we also want to talk about the outreach side. So I have one of my let's say investment partners and financial partners who has what's called Jelani Girls and Jelani Women. Both are outreach organizations. Both are not-for-profit organizations that want to empower girls and women throughout the world. But right now, the Jelani Women founder, Ashley Company, is on the continent. She's in South Africa at the moment, reaching out to other people in the same space and to also young girls, women who, are looking for areas of empowerment, like looking for places to go for girls' code, for example, math and science enrichment. So I think that's very important in the same, capacity of the business side, but also there's a few of us, including my good friend Jelani, who just walked up, who will be doing in combination, in parallel with their businesses here. His is apparel, but he's already stated that in parallel with that, he wants to do outreach, and that means education, and that means financial literacy education. That means, just the layers that are going to be required for the citizenry from now for the next 20 years. To be empowered and to continue to grow and enhance themselves.
So I want to ask you guys one last thing. What do you consider the most exciting new frontier stuff out there tech-wise, and maybe not so new frontier, maybe not so greenfields, and perhaps not even anything you're involved with? Like, what are you excited about looking into the next 5-10 years?
I'm most excited about Virtual reality. I think it's awesome. It's the greatest thing ever. I just gave him a Google Cardboard. I mean, that's not virtual reality per se, but it's just to play with, man. I've got a chance to wear Oculus Rift. I can't wait to get back because we have a new company that is doing VR production and the American Underground, the co-working space that I am working on. I can't wait to get back and talk to that person and make something. But specifically, I like the ramifications of it on medicine and primarily psychological. The ability to be able to create realities that will help people temper the various psychological ailments. I think is very interesting. Another one, I'm still IoT, right? But specifically, I like the idea of smart homes. I'm working with a real estate developer right now in Washington, D.C., who has 7 projects that he's working on, single family and multi-unit properties, where he wants to make the house as smart as possible. So when you walk in, there's a dashboard that lets you know all the efficiency of the entire property. I love those two things. And I like everything Elon Musk does.
He's ours, bro. He's ours. Yeah, he doesn't look like it, but yeah, he's ours in some form. Okay, so Brien, and the virtual reality thing, I don't get it because, I mean, we barely do well with the reality we have. I don't know how it's going to help. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, of course. When I'm being operated on and it's benefited me and all the research is paying off, I'm sure I'll be very grateful for all the advances. But what's exciting you at the moment, Brien?
Although I'm not I'm not a tech guy, traditionally, you could say. I mean, you could say that I am. I fly the most advanced machines in the world. Actually, you could say that I am.
That's one thing that I want to interject, right? Is that just within the past 4 years has tech specifically meant computer coding, right? Let's back up. We're really talking about engineering and people who have an engineering mindset when they're creating things. So when I'm talking about tech and I'm talking about tech education, I'm not specifically talking about computer coding. I'm not talking about lines of CSS and HTML specifically and apps. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about engineers, right? Whether that's auto, whether that's air, whether it's aerodynamics, which I guess is air, right? But anything that requires you to build something, right, that has a technical component to it, are the people that I want to work with, develop relationships, nurture.
I like that. This business major likes what you just said, because otherwise I don't belong here either.
So really quick, on the tech frontier, what I like is space travel. You know, we used to think that air travel wasn't possible, but now we take jets 17 hours in flight at once, travel, 7,000-8,000 kilometers at a time. So I really like that.
Would you do that Mars trip and never come back?
No. But if that's your thing, I'd say go for it. You never know. You maybe start a new community on Mars. But so I will say though, in the media space and tech space, I do like what Atomos is doing. I like what the Red Camera, Atomos. These are companies that do specifically like cameras, camera bodies, so 6K. They're kind of stretching it out in terms of like what's happening from a standpoint side of those film cameras and lenses, right, that we use now in micro sizes that used to take up a whole room. So that capacity in tech, the drones, the ability to do lots of things with that, like from mapping to market research to delivery to home delivery. So I think there's a lot to happen with the aerial space, and I'm attached to the aerial space obviously because I'm a pilot. So I like all those things.
To bombing nations? I'm kidding.
No. We don't do that.
Fantastic. No, we don't want drones doing that.
No drones doing that. Just drones for humanitarian purposes only.
Drones for good. Fellas, thank you so much for joining us on the African Tech Roundup. We look forward to hanging out perhaps on your side of the ocean. And looking forward to having you back and really good stories. And as and when anything unfolds that's worth talking about, we want to know about it. You know where to find us. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I'm loving African Tech Roundup.